weather take
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to today afternoon session classes on high voltage. So today we will see the few questions from the previous classes. So these topics which you have covered in the last class, I just put few questions and you go through these questions. At the end of the high voltage sessions, anyway, we will go through all the questions from the high voltage also. And so here it says like explain arcing, arc flash and arc blast. So we know what is arc. Just to remind you, arc means it's a production of unintentional electrical arc during opening of a breaker or isolator or a switch. So due to the discharge of electricity through the medium between the contacts, it produces an arc. So arc means it's a production of unintentional electrical arc during opening of a breaker or isolator or any switches. Then arc flash means it's the intense light. The intense light formed at the point of arc, we call it as an arc flash. Okay. And arc blast means it is the instant of heating the air surrounding the arc. So the air surrounding the arc gets heated up and the conductor gets vaporized. It is resulting in a formation of a high pressure wave. And if this high pressure wave is not released, it becomes an explosion. So it's like a arc blast. Okay. Then what are the precautions to be taken while carrying out HV switching? See, HV switching basically it's the same procedures. Most of the things are same. Like whenever there is a dangerous condition, it is if a dangerous condition is considered by an authorized person and to be, so you should if suppose there is a condition like it's a dangerous condition, then it is to be isolated. The equipment has to be isolated. Then permit to work has to be issued. All the works has to be determined by all the high voltage works are authorized by the isolation procedure, lockout and tagout procedure, even if it is sanctioned to test also. Then other thing is like the tools, whatever it is, this has to be specified for the high voltage. And a competent person, when it is working, he has to be accompanied by a safety persons. So these are the precautions to be taken while working on the high voltage switching. High voltage switching means whenever you work on high voltage systems, what precautions you have to take? That is the question part. Okay, what are the precautions you need to take while working on high voltage systems? Then explain arc flash boundaries and hazard risk categories. So this we have discussed in the last class is arc flash boundaries. So there are boundaries like how far you can go, how safe you are from the arc flash, this thing, how much distance you have to keep, and the hazard risk categories. There are various hazard risk categories that we have discussed in the last class. Okay, and this arc flash boundaries, I will show you one OSHA chart, how much is the distance, again, how much we can go near to a high voltage equipments, if it is like when you work or when you live systems. Then we have seen circuit main earth. Explain the following circuit main earth. Okay, so this circuit main earth means, see, an earth connection applied to the purpose of making apparatus safe to work, that is called circuit main earth. So whenever you make an earth connection for the purpose of making apparatus to be safe, this has to be done before the permit to work is issued or before the sanction to test is being issued. So this should be as per the document, like what is the procedure of the main circuit main earth. So circuit main earth means it's an earth connection applied for the purpose of making apparatus to be safe. That is called the circuit main earth. Then this isolation certificate. Isolation certificate means it is issued by the authorized person. Okay, it is issued by the authorized person after all the parts of the electrical system has been isolated by means of the safe isolation procedure. That is the isolation certificate. So isolation certificate is issued by the authorized person after he satisfies that equipment has been isolated by means of safe isolation procedure. Okay, that is the isolation certificate. Permit to work means, permit to work, it's a form of declaration. It is a form of declaration signed by authorized person, and he give this permit to work to the competent person. So we can say it is a form of declaration signed and given by authorized persons to competent person, making known to him, making known to the competent person that what is the extent of work, what job he has to perform, what apparatus are dead, what apparatus have been isolated, what is being like discharged, any residual charges, what is being earthed, and which is safe to work. This is a permit to work. So permit to work will contain all these parameters. That means what is the extent of the job, which equipment is being made dead, which is being isolated, which is being earthed, and which is safe to work, that is permit to work. Sanction to test means it is to test, like a form of declaration. It's also a form of declaration signed and given by authorized person to the competent person. Okay, so mentioning like what apparatus to be tested, what test is to be carried out, and what are the conditions under which the testing is to be carried out. Example like a Megger test or a breaker functioning test, a breaker test or breaker overload test, Megger test. This all comes under sanction to test. It's only for high voltage equipments what I'm talking. So permit to work means it is for work. It is issued by authorized person to competent person, and it has to be mentioned various sections like what is the extent of the job, and which is the equipment as being isolated, which is being earthed. All these things will be mentioned in permit to work system. Sanction to test is to test an equipment. I told you testing equipment means like a Megger test of a generator winding, or a breaker test, or a bus bar some test, or some overload test, whatever it is on the high voltage system. This is also one another permit, sanction to test. Then what is the effect of electrical shock at higher frequencies, higher voltage on human bodies? See, electrical shock, we have seen electrocution, electrical shock. And what are the hazards of electrical shock? Fall like burn, fall, injuries, these are all the hazards. And what is the effect of electrical shock on higher frequencies? What is the effect of electrical shock on higher voltage on human bodies? What is the effect of electrical shock on higher current? Okay. So it is all the purpose. If you look at this, the current is the main thing. Basically because the current flows through the body, which causes electrical shock. But voltage level and the path resistance determines how much current is flowing. Is it? So what causes electrical shock is the current. But then again, it depend upon the voltage level and the path which follows. So you can say how much current flows is determined by the voltage level and the path resistance of this path. So it is, if you see I is equal to V by R, this is the same formula which is being used here. So here in this case, higher the voltage, higher the current, because I is equal to V by R, higher the voltage, higher the current. But if the frequency increases, then the current will reduce, because current is inversely proportional to the frequency. As frequency goes up, current reduces. That means if you see the supply is 50 Hertz, let's say the current is, let's say 75 amps. When the supply becomes 60 Hertz, it will reduce again to, let's say, less than 75 amps, maybe say like 65 amps or something. So when it becomes more higher frequencies, the current will come down. So the shock intensity reduces with the higher frequencies. It's because of the inductive reactance. Inductive reactance, it will come down because current is inversely proportional to frequency. Or you can say I is equal to V by Z. As the impedance goes high, then the current will start reducing it. So this is the effect of electrical shock on a higher frequency, higher voltage on human body. Then what causes electrical shock? Current is the one which causes the electrical shock. But again, current is again depend upon the voltage level and the path resistance. So we can say this path resistance and the voltage determines how much current is flowing, and the cause of shock is current only. What is the minimum current which can let go? That is 15 milliamps, 15 mA. 15 milliamps is the let go current. Okay. Then list the high voltage PPEs. What the last class I have shown you the PPE, various PPEs for high voltage. If you see from top, let's say like a hat, face hood, the shield for the face, then goggles, then ear protections, then comes the arc suit, then safety footwear, safety gloves. Okay, what else is there? Yeah, so these are the high voltage PPs, and this all must be certified and should be tested for higher voltage. So various high voltage PPs are this ones. Then this high voltage categories. You see, the high voltage category has been specified. There are various categories. This is specified by National Fire Association, and they specify various categories like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 categories are there. So the 0 category is 0 to 1.2 calorie per centimeter square. Now this calorie per centimeter square is how much energy your fabric can absorb it. So basically we decide what type of PPU you require it based on these hazard risk categories. So whether it is falling like category 4 means you are in the range of 40 calorie per centimeter square. 40 calorie per centimeter square means it's a very high temperature. So you need to have a PPE suitable for that categories. So there are 4 categories. Basically, it is 5 categories: 0 to 1, 0 to 1 to 1.2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 category. 5 categories are the total from 0 to 4. So this category specifies what type of PPE you have to use, because your this calorie per centimeter square, that is means how much energy can be absorbed by the PPE what you are wearing. It's all depend upon the hazard risk categories. Okay, so these are the few questions from the last class. Just go through these questions, and at the end of the sessions, probably in the next week, we will have a final, once we finish up this high voltage, we'll discuss through all the questions. Okay. So let's go to the today's topic. Go through all these questions. These are all few selected questions, only important questions, so that basically main core points are there. Go through each one of them. And wherever you have any doubt, you can ask me. So if need to be repeated, I'll repeat it. So today's class, we'll go to the switching and isolation procedure on marine high voltage systems. So today class, we will discuss one full procedure on high voltage. I have selected today for a high voltage inspection of the generator windings. So like inspection of the generator windings, or Megger test of the generator windings, or inspection of the main switchboard, or changing of transformers. So all this can be like any one of them. You must know the full procedure. That is mean from starting to the end of it. Okay. So switching and isolation procedure on a marine high voltage systems. So the safety procedure for high voltage work, the sequence of procedure. Now, normally in high voltage ships, those who have worked on high voltage ships, you must be knowing it. And those who have not worked, I'll just go through the full procedure. Normally, high voltage, any work has to be discussed in the work plan meetings. On board ship, you have work plan meetings. Most of the time, the work plan meetings are in the evening or in the morning. You have to discuss this in prior to the work. What is the work plan? So what is the plan? What is the plan? When you discuss in the work plan, you have to say what job is going to be planned. Then we come to the, once you discussed it, when you come to the sequence of isolation. So what is the isolation procedure? How you are going to isolate it? Okay, that is the switching schedule. Then prove the equipment dead and isolate. Once it is dead, then only you can isolate it. So first, this means if it is a breaker or whether it is a generator, it has to be proved that, then isolate it, then put the lockout for life. And once everything is finished, then the permit is issued. So once the permit is issued, the work can be commenced. On completion of the work, equipment has to be de-isolated, then permit to test and prove safe and put in service. So these are the general procedure. So let's see one full work in this. So here, let's say inspection of the generator windings. So it's a high voltage generator. You wanted to inspect the generator winding of the a high voltage generator. So first thing is the plan, the scope of the work. What is the scope of the work? That means inspection of the generator winding. Then what is the sequence of isolation? How you are going to isolate it? So all these things has to be in the plan, because when you make a generator, making a generator dead, so it should not affect the ship's other machineries or ship operational capabilities. It should not be affected. That's the reason this has to be discussed in the work plan meeting. So that because you may need some more power, so if the one generator is not available, all these things has to be discussed in the work plan meeting. That so next week or whichever the day you plan to carry out this job, this has to be discussed in the work plan meeting. Once it is work plan meeting, idea is that everybody is aware of it. Because when chief engineer discuss this job, chief officer is aware of it, so that he will not start any cargo pump or cargo compressor or some heavy machineries. At the same time, master also will be present, so he knows that yes, one generator is going to be out of operation. So the load cannot go much. If you need all the generator, is not going to be possible. You cannot get a higher speed. So all these things are there. So this has to be discussed in the work plan meeting. Then we have to make a risk assessment. As I told you, risk assessment means, what is risk? Risk means it's a combination of probability of and severity of the consequence of a specific accident. Risk means it is a probability and severity of the consequence of a specific accident is called risk. Hazard means a potential to create a harmful event or a potential to contribute to a harmful event. Hazard is that. So anything harmful things can happen, like an accident. So what are the potentials to create or contribute to a harmful event is called the risk. So that is risk. Then risk assessment means you are evaluating whether risks are acceptable or not. So then once you make a risk assessment, you are evaluating it, whether the risks are acceptable or not. Because if you have a very higher risk, then you cannot start that job. And then risk analysis means it is the systematic identification of workplace hazards and their severity. That is called risk analysis. So when you make a risk assessment, you always refer to the previous risk assessment on the same job if it is done. And so that you will get a quickly what are the hazards from this, what are the precautions you have been taken, all these things you can come to know with the previous risk assessment. So once the job is over, next part is to make a risk assessment. Risk assessment is made by all the people who is involved in this job. That means on board ship, let's say chief engineer is involved, ETO is involved, whoever is a standby person, he is involved, any other persons also, they all will be involved in risk assessment. So once you make the risk assessment, that means there is no risk. All the risk has been taken care and the appropriate actions have been taken. Okay. So as you have seen, like yesterday in the risk assessment, when you make a risk assessment, you have two columns in that. One is called severity and consequence. Severity and consequence and likelihood. Severity and consequence means how severe it is. Likelihood means how many times it has happened before. So when you multiply both the severity and consequence multiplied by the likelihood, you get the risk score. So generally the risk score has to be between 1 to 6. That's a green mark. If it goes more than 1 to 6 means it is in yellow zone or dangerous zone, then you need to have appropriate precautions to be taken. So once you calculate a risk score from the risk assessment and you are safe, all are in the green zone, that is 1 to 6 score, that means you can proceed with the job. So once you make a risk assessment with all the team who is involved, the risk assessment has to be forwarded to the company safety officer. So once the company receives the risk assessment and they confirm that yes, there is no risk, they can proceed with the job. They give an approval, then only the job can be started on board ship. As the job starts, the captain has to send a message to the company, the work has been started. And once finishes also, captain has to send a message to the company that work has been completed. So after planning, next is the risk assessment. Once the risk assessment is finished, the next step is prove the equipment dead. That means if it is a generator, make sure it is totally dead. Then you isolate the generator, put the locks, then PTW issued, works commenced, work then completed, then de-isolation. So it goes like that. Then sanction to test, test to prove, put in service, cancel PTO. So here, alternator inspections, discuss the scope of the job to be discussed in the daily work plan meeting. Discuss the effect of job on ship's operational status, effect on other machineries, duration of the work, staff involved in work, various safety measures taken. So this has to be discussed in the planning section. Then prepare the risk assessment, review previous risk assessment. If you have previous, normally you'll find all the jobs previous risk assessment, so it is easy to know what are the risks. If it is there, then even also you can make it, that's no problem, but you have to take little more time to make this risk assessment. And once it is completed, the risk score is within the safety score of 1 to 6. As I told you, score means its severity multiplied by the likelihood gives you the risk score. Forward the risk assessment to company in advance and get an approval for the work. Once finishes risk assessment, then we are coming to the isolation part. So generally, like when you do a generator inspections, the generator to be taken out from standby and put in the local mode. So that is the first thing you have to do is in the control room, when you come there, take the generator off from the standby mode and put it in the local mode, so that the generator doesn't start an auto start. Suppose there's a power requirement small, if you want to start a compressor motor, whenever the load is, when the power is less, what happens? The automatic standby generator starts. So you have to ensure that generator is being taken out from the standby, put in the local mode at the ECR and locally on the generator platform. So you have to go down to the generator platform, put the generator switch to the local mode, in the ECR, take out from the standby mode, put into the manual mode. Then warning notice to be placed in the ECR also, on the generator also. So this is first step. Second step is engage the turning gear. Once you engage the turning gear, shut the starting gear, drain the starting gear, safety locks and tag out. So this is the second step. Engage the turning gear, shut off the starting gear valve, lock it with a keypad, lock the starting gear valve so that nobody can open the starting gear valve. Switch off the generator space heaters. You see the space heaters inside the generators are, it's very 220 volt phase space heaters, but you'll find on the both side inside the alternator there are 2 heater sets. So when you put your hand inside and all, when inspections, you can get burned. So it is ensure that the space heaters are switched off. 220 supply switched off. This is switched off from the generator panel itself. There is a 220 volt switch. You can switch off the space heaters. Next is alternator breaker on switchboard should be put in local mode and confirmed breaker is open. Then you have to come to the main switchboard. The respective breaker for that alternator should be changed from remote to local. When you put to remote, somebody can activate the switchboard breaker from the control room. So once you put into local, only from the switchboard you can switch on the breaker or switch off the breaker. Okay. So alternator breaker on switchboard should be put in local mode and confirm breaker is open. How you check the confirm breaker is open? Because you have an indication on top in front of the breaker. It is red or green. If it is green, red means it is open. Green means it is closed. Also, you can see there's an indicator also which indicates that it is open or closed. So this is the next step is coming, racking out the supply breaker. Racking out the supply breaker means you have to extract the supply breaker out. So there is a special key for that. I will show you in the photo coming slides what is that key. You need to put that handle inside and just turn it in the clockwise direction. The breaker will come out slowly. So that is means it is racking out. Once it is racked out, then you have to make an earthing switch. That means the breaker, the connection part, that means what is incoming to the breaker till the generator part will be grounded. Okay, not the bus bar side. So behind the breaker, this cables till generator part will be grounded using the closing earthing switch. And once the earthing switch is closed, you need to put the safety locks and tag out. So earthing switch has to be locked so that nobody can remove the earthing. So this is locks and tag out. So once now means you have finished the breaker part, then again on the alternator terminal box, check any residual voltage with high voltage test probe. So on the alternator side, you'll find the heavy big terminal box where the cables are going. So normally you'll find this, I should told you the color of the cables are pink cables. There will be 6 cables in that because RYB phase will be having 2 cables each. So you need to open the terminal box and check with a high voltage probe. I've shown you the probe in the last class. That probe is around 1.5 meters long probe. Take the probes and check there is no residual voltage inside the terminal box. If you find any residual voltage, then you have to put a portable earthing cables and ground it. Okay, once you finish this, if any residual voltage at terminals, then additional earthing to be connected with portable earth leads. So if there is no residual voltage, it's fine. If it is still there, then you have to use an additional earthing cable and additional earthing to be connected with the portable earth leads. This is a portable earth cables, earthing cables. There will be plenty of portable earth cables you'll find on high voltage ships. and it has got a special tool for connecting it also. I will show you in the coming slide how the tools looks like. So once there is no residual voltage, work area to be placed with a barrier. That is very important, so that nobody can enter, and because terminals are open, so you have to put a barrier so that no one can enter accidentally into these areas. Whatever it may be, even if you are removing a motor also, if you are a working generator also, the barriers have to be placed. It is even low voltage also, you have to put these barriers around so that nobody can enter accidentally into the site of work. Okay, and all other standby precautions has to be taken, because like fire, fire precautions like portable CO2 extinguishers, all to be prepared. So once all these things are done, now what we have done is we have make the system dead, we have isolated, we put the locks and tags, everything in place. Then the authorized person should inspect this. Then he is satisfied that whatever the isolations and everything is done is satisfactory, he will issue a permit to work. So in this case, on board ship, chief engineer will be the authorized person. He inspect what all the isolations you have done, what isolations and you have done on the generator side, what you have done on the switchboard, everything is satisfied. He will issue, the authorized person will sign the permit, and he will give to the competent person. Once confirmed by the authorized person in presence of the competent person, the isolation is done satisfactory as per the permit to work systems. Permit to work will be issued by the authorized person to the competent person. Then the work can be commenced and completion time to be reported to the company. Competent person should accompanied by a standby person. The standby person should be briefed about his work, because standby persons can be anybody. Maybe he need not to be any electrical background or anything, but he should be briefed like first aid things. In case there is a first aid requirement, how you apply a first aid, or in case of an emergency, what you should do. All this thing has to be briefed to the accompanied person who is accompanying the standby person. Once work is completed and satisfied by the authorized person, that means work has been completed, then system has to be de-isolated, and then test can be done. Sanction to test will be issued by authorized persons. Okay, once sanction to test is completed, equipment can be put into service, and the permit will be cancelled by authorized person and informed to the company. So this is the full sequence of works. This is one example about inspection of generator. So there are, you can make it for Megger test of generator, or inspection of the bus bars, or changing of the breakers, or changing of the transformers. So there are plenty of activities involved in the high voltage systems. For everything has to be in the same procedure. The steps are same. Okay. So here you can see the authorized person should record the details of necessary safety precautions and switching operations on a safety program, and produce an isolation earthing diagram. The switchgear supplied by high voltage winding should be switched off, and safety lock and caution sign fitted. Care should be taken to ensure that any auxiliary supplies are also isolated with the safety locks. So these are like space heater supplies, etc. has to be switched off. Okay. So these working procedures are divided into two distinct groups. One is called dead working, and working in the vicinity of the live parts. So dead working means work activity on electrical installations which are neither live nor charged, carried out after taking all the measures to prevent electrical danger. So one is dead working. One is working in the vicinity of the live parts. That means all the work activity in which worker enters the vicinity of a live zone with body or with tools and equipment without encroaching to live zone. So using a correct personal protective equipments and following safe work practice will minimize the risk of electrical shock hazards. Okay, so working procedure can be divided either a dead working or working in the vicinity of the live parts. Okay, so before we come to these topics, so now this is the switching isolation procedure. Okay. So what are the switching and isolation procedure? This we can explain each one of them, what it stands for. Like first is the planning, then planning, then risk assessment, then proving the equipment dead, then isolating, then lockout for life, permit to work should be issued, work commenced, work completed, on completion of the work, de-isolated, sanction to test if required. If not required, this can be avoided. Test and proof and put in service, cancel PTW. So this is general for all the high voltage systems. The procedure is same. Whatever it may be, like switchboard inspection also, the procedure will be same. Like first will be the planning section, then will be the risk assessment. And as I told you, like planning section is, it has to be discussed in the work plan meeting. Risk assessment has to be made by the all the group of people who is involved in this work. So you cannot eliminate anybody in this. So if you need some work on the deck also, deck people are there, you have to involve them also. Suppose even like a standby person is, suppose let's say maybe some junior engineer or maybe some oiler or somebody, whoever it may be there, you have to involve him also. And the risk assessment has to be made together by the team itself. And the risk assessment is made on all the risk hazard possibilities taking into considerations, so that you don't leave out any other risk. And if the risk score, as I said, the risk score is calculated on the severity and consequence multiplied by the likelihood. Likelihood means how many times it can happen. What is the severity of it? If it exceeds more than the risk score, that is 1.6 is the normal in the green zone. If it more than the risk score, then you have to apply the additional protections or preventions so that the hazard doesn't take place. Then only you can proceed with that. So once you make the risk assessment, that it goes to the company and company sees that, yeah, there is no risk, everything is within the limits, 1 to 6 score, green zone, yes, the work can be proceeded, otherwise the work cannot be proceeded, they won't give permission to commence the job. So this is very important, risk assessment. All the high voltage jobs, risk assessment is mandatory. I think even low voltage ships also, risk assessment has to be made for job, like lifting jobs. If it is a lifting job also, you have to make a risk assessment. If you're overhauling a motor, a heavy motor, yes, you need a risk assessment. Overboard works, high altitude work means high area works. All this you need a risk assessment on board ship. Nowadays it is very must. Then proving the equipment to be dead. If it is energized, it has to be dead with appropriate tools. You have to measure it, ensure it is being dead. Then the equipment has been properly isolated. Lockout for life means lockout and tag out. First you lock out, then you put the tags. Then permit to work, and then work can be started. On completion of the work, de-isolate it. If required to test it, get that sanction to test and get it tested. Test and prove, put the equipment in service, cancel, PTW. So this is the perfect sequence what we carry on board ship. Because in a day, like every day, because when I was there on board ship, we used to make a risk assessment almost every day for every job in the high voltage ships. Most of the jobs are with a risk assessment, whether it is not only electrical or engineering, everywhere you have to make a risk assessment. And this is the standard policies. Okay. So this is with this, and we'll go to the next topic is the insulation resistance test and polarization index test on high voltage equipment. You see, what is the purpose of insulation resistant test? This is the IR test, what we generally do on board ship is the insulation resistant test. Both insulation resistant test and polarization index test are conducted on HV machines to determine the service condition of the insulations. Even on high voltage equipments also we are doing insulation test and polarization test. This polarization test, there is one more test called dark test, okay, dielectric absorption test. And there's the same test, polarization and dark test is almost coming in the same pattern, but it's only the timing differs. That we'll see in details why we do it, how we do it. In SV machines, and windings are likely to be affected by the moisture and contaminations. Polarization index IP test, that is polarization index test, is conducted specially to determine the dryness and cleanness of the winding insulations. Okay, so we will see in details more what is this polarization test. Now, first is the insulation resistant test. We are applying a high voltage across any conductor and ground. Is it when you apply, when you are taking a Megger test of a motor, we are applying 500 volt Megger. Is it? So 500 volt DC voltage you are applying between a conductor and a ground, because Megger one connection will be on the winding side, one will be at the ground. So you are applying a high voltage. So what you are measuring here is the voltage is applied across an insulator. So due to this applied high voltage, there will be a current through the electrical insulator. There will be a leakage of current. Dividing the voltage by current, that is I is equal to V by R, that's Ohm's law. We are actually measuring how much is the leakage current. So the test is generally done by IR tester. It gives required voltage across the insulator and shows the resistance value of the insulator directly on the meter mega range. So IR tester are generally of 500 volt, 2.5 means 2500 volt or 5000 volt DC. So 500 volt megas we are used for insulation test up to 1.1 kV. That means around 1100 volt insulations. For higher voltage transformer or higher voltage, we are using 2500 or 5000 volt mega. So when you apply a 500 volt mega, you are applying a 500 volt DC voltage between a conductor and a ground. So what we are measuring is that because we are measuring the current, the leakage current, how much current is leaking through the insulator. Okay. So for 440 volt systems, 500 volt mega is good enough. But if you need a like a 6.6, you need to have a higher voltage mega. That's why we're using 5000 volt mega in case of 6.6. Now, insulation resistance test is done for 1 minute. We are always doing for 1 minute. Why? Because all the insulators are dielectric in nature. They have a capacitive properties. They have a capacitive properties. So due to that, during application of a voltage across an electric insulator, there will be a charging current. You know, the insulator act like a capacitance effect is formed. Insulator is what? It is like a media in between, no? So the insulator will act like a capacitance. So when you apply initially a voltage, after some time when the insulator is totally charged, the capacitive changing current becomes zero, and then only the resistive conductive current present in the insulator. So that is why it is always recommended to do the insulation resistance test at least for 1 minute, as it is proved that charging current totally becomes zero after 1 minute. Initially, when you apply this voltage, the insulator behaves like a capacitor. Initially it will get slowly charged up. At that time, because that is why you have to give us some time, that 1 minute, that's 60 seconds. So that you have to give a 1 minute time so that the current gets decayed. The current should go out. You see, capacitor is what? When you apply voltage across this capacitor, initially it will start charging, slowly charging. Once it becomes equal to the charge voltage, equal to the potential what you applied, charging stops there in case of a capacitor. The same thing happening with a cable. So when you apply or cable or insulator, when you apply voltage, initially it gets charged, and you should give us some time for that current to decay. That is why you are waiting for 1 minute. Okay. So initially, always whenever you apply mega, you must think that you must apply for 1 minute at least, not just few seconds. Just take a mega quickly for 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Taking the reading is not the correct value. You need to apply for 1 minute and check the readings. And once you finish the mega test, you must ground it so that any residual charge is being discharged also. So that is the reasons why we do for 1 minute. Okay. Now, what are the components of the leakage current? You see, when you apply voltage across any insulator, there is a leakage current. This leakage current constitutes few components. One is a capacitive component, resistive component, surface leakage component, and a polarization component. So there are 4 components coming in this leakage current. Okay, so what are the components of a leakage current? Leakage current means when you apply voltage across an insulator, there is a leakage current, because voltage you are applying to the insulator, so current has to leak from this insulator. Some leakage current is formed. What is this components of this leakage current? Capacity component. That is why we are applying for 1 minute, this capacity component effect. So when a DC voltage is applied across an insulator, because of its dielectric nature, because dielectric means capacitive type nature, there will be an initial high charging current. Like a capacitor, it gets charged through the insulator from line to ground. So although this current decays exponentially and becomes zero, after some time it will decay. But this current exists for about 10 seconds for the test. But it takes 60 seconds to decay. That is why we are waiting for 1 minute. Once you apply mega, you wait for 1 minute to take the readings. Okay, so this is the effect of capacitive component. Another is called the resistive or conductive component. Now the current is purely conductive. The current is purely conductive in nature, flows through the insulator.
Oi,
This is the insulator is
bye
filled.
bye, bye bye. Ciao.
This is a direct flow of electrons. Every insulator should have a component of electric current. So the resistive or conductive component of insulator leakage remains constant throughout the test. So one is a resistive part, or we can say conductive part. So one is a capacitive component, resistive component, and surface leakage. Surface leakage means any insulator on the component, because of the dust and moisture on the component on the surface of the insulator, there is a small component of leakage current. So through the outer surface of insulator. Because if you see a cable, if it is lying for a long time inside the engine room because of the moisture, because of the dust, there is also a leakage of current from the surface part. That is called surface leakage component. Okay, so this is another component. So this leakage current is, one is capacitive component, resistive component, surface leakage component. This is because of the moisture and the dirt, etc. on the insulator, there can be leakage. This is the resistance property of the insulator. This is a capacitance property. And third one is the polarization. The polarization means every insulator has got a hygroscopic in nature. That means the molecule inside an insulator is, when it is applied a positive and negative potential, what happens? Like one side is positive, one is negative, because it's a DC voltage what you are applying. So the molecules also got a property like charge properties. So the positive side, the negative molecules that will try to approach that side, positive will come this side. So every insulator is hygroscopic in nature, means when an electric field is applied across an insulator, the polar molecules mean the polar molecules inside the insulator will align themselves along the direction of electric field. So that means positive and negative electric field, this molecule will, negative will move towards the positive and positive will move towards the negative. So this energy required for this alignment of the polar molecules comes from a voltage source in form of electric current. This current is called the polarization current. It continues until the polar molecules align themselves along the direction of field. You see, if the insulator is very old insulator, this molecule will take time to test and get aligned with these polarities. So that is, if it is a new insulator, that means, let's say, maybe some new, let's take a cable, it's a new cable. So because this is a new cable and the polar molecules will quickly align it. But if it's very old cable, which is dried, which is lying for a long time, it takes time for the molecules to align. This is the polarization component. Here you can see here, polarization component, only measuring insulation resistance by IR tester for 1 minute does not always give a reliable results, because this insulation test is again depend upon the ambient temperature. As the resistive value of the electrical insulator also varies with the temperature, this difficulty is partially solved by introducing a polarity index test, or short form we call PI test. So normal insulation values are taking what you are getting it for 1 minute. It may not give a reliable result. So that is the reasons we go for a polarization test. That means polarization test means we take it the reading for 1 minute. Okay. Let's say you have a chart of time and resistance. You apply the megar 500 volt megar for 1 minute. So you got the reading about 90 megohms, let's say. And then you applied for 10 minutes. So then you got 100 megohms. So 1 minute you got 90 megohms, 10 minutes you got 100 megohms. Polarization index will be 100 divided by 90. That means it is 1.11. So the polarization index will be 1.11. Okay, so it's simple as it is. So only measuring insulation resistance by IR tester for 1 minute does not give you a reliable results. And as the resistive value of the electrical insulator also varies with the temperature, this difficulty is partially solved by PI test. It takes 10 minutes to align, because here it takes 10 minutes to align the polar molecules along the electric field. That's why we take IR tester result for 10 minutes. There would not be any polarization in IR test result. So when we take IR test value for insulator for 1 minute, the result reflects the IR value which is free from effective of capacitive and component leakage current. But for polarization test, polarization component, it takes 10 minutes. So that is why what you get in 1 minute is basically your IR value which is free from effective, capacitive and leakage current. That means capacitive component of the leakage current you are getting in 1 minute. And when you apply for 10 minutes, you are getting a value which is without a polarization current. So polarization means how much time it takes for a polar molecule. Polar molecule means the molecule which is inside the insulator to get aligned, to get tested and get aligned with the charge voltage or the applied voltage. So we take an IR tester value of insulator for 10 minutes. The IR test value shows the value which is free from effective capacity component and polarization component. So hope you understood. Polarization means we are applying for 1 minute. What reading you get? Let's say 90 megohms you got. Then you apply for 10 minutes, you got 100 megohms. So polarization index will be 100 megohms divided by 90 megohms. So that means 1.11. So it is, then this value, I will show you another chart. You can see here, if it is less than 1, means it is dangerous conditions. Questionable 1.0 to 2. There is no unit for this. So PA index, there is no unit. So like 90 megohms divided by 100 megohms, you are getting 1.11. So basically you are in the questionable range, 1.0 to 2. 2 to 4 is good and above 4 is excellent. So when you carry out this test, when you do the polarization index test, when the routine insulation resistance values taken at different temperatures are doubtful, or during annual refit, or after major repairs have been undertaken, a PA test is conducted. So the PA value is the ratio between the IR values recorded after application of the test voltage continuously for 10 minutes to the value recorded after 1 minute of application. Within an interval of 1 minute between two readings, a PA value of 2.0 is more considered good. If it is 2.0 and above, is considered to be good. So this test you normally do it like in the dry dock time, or generator, suppose generator is lying idle for not being used for maybe months, or then you have to check the winding, because basically this PA test is carried out for like moisture contaminations, etc. We are doing this PA test. And this PA test is, suppose you get a lower values, then what can be done? Suppose you got less than 1. So as I told you, like polarization means it's mainly due to the moisture content and dirt content. So what they do is normally they do like heating of the, washing the windings and revarnishing and heating. So that generally this will come up. If it is still it is not, then probably have to change it. So this is a polarization index test. And the whole idea behind polarization index test and IR values, the difference is that the IR value what you get after 1 minute is free of capacitive component or capacitive component of the leakage current. And the polarization index test is free of capacitive component also, polarization current also. Again, it depends upon the windings, whether it is old insulator or good insulator. Good insulator means it will be much higher values, because these polar molecules will get aligned very fast. So you get a better polarization index with the new insulators. Okay, so this is about the polarization index test. Another is called the dark test. And this is also, this dark test means dielectric absorption test. It's a combination of actually two tests. The PA test also comes in this. This is 60 to 30 seconds ratio test. There it was 1 minute to 10 minutes. Here it was 60 seconds to 30 seconds. Okay, so dark test means it's a dielectric absorption test. It is a timed insulation test like a PA test, but times involved are shorter. With a dark test, the insulation resistance is measured after test voltage is applied for 30 seconds. Then again after it has been applied for 1 minute, that is 60 seconds. The DAR is the ratio of two results. Since the test times are shorter, the DAR measurement is usually lower than the PA measurement. Typically, DAR will be 1.4 or higher if the insulation is being tested is in good conditions. So generally, if it is more than 1.4, then it is considered to be good. So these are the few tests. What we do is insulation resistance test. Then we have a dark test, that is a dielectric absorption test. Dielectric absorption test is done for, first we do for 30 seconds, take the readings, then do for 60 seconds, take the readings. And PA test is for 10 minutes and 1 minute. 1 minute you apply, then you apply for 10 minutes. So these are the, then this additional one more test is called the hypo test, that is called high potential test. That is only for high potential, means to check the cable. It's not for the how much potential, means when you apply high potential, that is called hypo test. Okay, it's slightly different than this insulation test, but the concept is same. So generally, what are the tests you carry out? Insulation test. So one is the insulation resistance test, dark test, dielectric absorption test, and polarization index test. What is the difference between dark test and polarization index test? Polarization index test is done for 1 minute reading and 10 minute reading. 10 minute reading divided by 1 minute reading, you get the polarization index. And whereas dark test is carried out for 30 seconds and 60 seconds. 60 seconds reading divided by 30 seconds reading is a dark value. IR test is carried out for 1 minute. So there is no other this thing. IR test is straight away 1 minute. Difference between IR test and the polarization index test. IR test is take care of the, there is no capacitive component of the leakage current, but polarization component is still there. But in polarization test, you don't have a capacity component as well as the polarization component, both as being removed. Okay. So these are the various tests in this. Insulation resistant test and polarization index test on high voltage equipments. Okay. So high voltage equipments, we are doing all these tests also. We are doing insulation resistance test, we are doing dark test, we are doing polarization test, we are doing hypo test also. So all these tests are carried out, especially polarization index test is carried out on high voltage equipments. And this test also can be carried out on the low voltage also. It's not that there's no restrictions on that. So these are the basic components of a leakage current. Any current, if you apply voltage across an insulator, you'll have a 4 components in this. One is a capacity component, one is a resistive component, one is a surface leakage component, one is a polarization component. Okay, this is very important. What are the components, leakage components? Leakage components of a leakage currents. Okay. So you have seen these values. Polarization index, if it is 1 to 2, it is questionable. There is no unit for polarization index test. 1 to 2 is questionable. 2 to 4 is 2 and above 2 is good. So if the polarization index value is less, then winding has to be cleaned, it has to be revarnished, it has to be heated, and then again the test has to be carried out. Okay, so the next topic is coming is a main switchboard. You see the switchboard also, the internal cleaning and maintenance of the main switchboard must only be carried out while it is being dead conditions. Any maintenance on high voltage switchboard requires permit to work, and it has to be in the dead conditions. After a full risk assessment has been carried out and a formal permit to work is issued. So the risk assessment will identify the actions and checks required to make switchboard safe, and these actions and checks will be identified in the permit to work. The major checks to be listed on the permit to work will verify the necessary interconnections to and from or within the main switchboards are disconnected. This includes but are not limited to short supply, emergency generator, emergency power supplies. So any maintenance which is done on the switchboards, even low voltage 440 volt switchboard also, if you want to do any maintenance and cleaning, you need to make the switchboard dead. Then you have to make all this procedure like work plan meetings, risk assessment, switching dead, isolation procedure, permit to work systems, all this thing has to be followed. So there is no way in the switchboard you cannot work on the live systems. You can make the switchboard dead. As I told you, switchboard can be dead with easily with the 2 tie breakers. So that is the whole purpose of the tiebreaker and switchboard, is that you can separate the switchboard into two sections, like port side and starboard side, or number 1 and number 2. Normally starboard side is considered as number 1 switchboard, port side is number 2 switchboard. You can segregate the switchboard into two sections. Any maintenance, suppose if you want to work on the number of starboard side switchboard, you can segregate it, you can work. And all the machineries, because the machineries which are supplied from port side, all has been supplied from the starboard side also. So there is no restriction that any of the machinery will be switched off. So normally you will have like fuel supply pumps, like fuel circulating pumps, all critical machineries like compressors, air compressors, all are being supplied from here. And in additional, like emergency things also being supplied from emergency switchboard, like emergency air compressor, maybe one supply pump, fuel oil supply pump, and one circulating pump also supplied from the emergency switchboard. So that will not affect anything with the segregation of the main switchboard. In emergency also, suppose some of the, as I told you last time, when you have a problem with some breaker something, you need to segregate the switchboard. So you can segregate it. So that is the reason we always run generator, one on the number 1 side, one on the port side. In case of an emergency, you have one generator on port side, one on the starboard side, you can segregate it. Okay. So main switchboard maintenance also same procedure, like internal cleaning, maintenance, all you need to proceed with the same risk assessment and isolation procedure. Everything has to be continued. Safety procedure and high voltage equipments. The guidance does not apply where the equipment has been isolated, discharged, disconnected, and removed from the system or installations. So equipment that is considered by an authorized person to be in dangerous condition to be isolated, elsewhere action taken to prevent it from being reconnected to the supply. All working on testing on high voltage equipment connected to the system should be authorized by permit to work system. See, it is mandatory that you have to have permit to work systems or sanction to test when you work on the high voltage equipment. No unauthorized tools cannot be used. See, high voltage, you have to measure. If you have to measure, you need to have a test probe. That is the first thing to check any residual voltage. Then you need to have a high voltage measure to measure the voltage, or you have a line tester, high voltage tester for this. So no other tools cannot be used on high voltage. Where any work or test requires an accompanying safety person to be present, he should be appointed before the work or testing can begin. So always there should be a standby person when you work on the high voltage equipment. One person cannot work on high voltage equipment. Voltage test indicators should be tested immediately before and after use against a test supply for designated purpose. Okay. So where the procedure involves the application of circuit main earth, the unauthorized removal of such earth should be prevented wherever practicable by application of safety locks. So whenever you make a earth switch on a switch breaker, this has to be locked so that nobody can put the breaker earth switch removed. It has to be locked with the safety locks. Where the procedure involves the removal of circuit main earth, that is testing under sanction or test, that will be secured with the working locks. The keys to the locks will be retained by the authorized persons who will remove and replace the earth as required. Suppose sometime when you make a breaker measure test, suppose you want to do a measure test of the generator winding, and let's say you have made the breaker earth switch on. So you cannot do the stator winding insulation test, because from the breaker to the generator winding is all earthed. So there is no point in putting measure, you will get all zero insulations. At that time, you need to release the breaker earth. So you have to remove the earth before you do the measure test. So at such times, authorized person has to remove and replace earth as requested. Okay, so safety procedure for high voltage work, sequence of procedure. First is the planning, sequence of isolation, proving that isolate the equipment, and lockout for life, permit is being issued, work, de-isolate, permit to test and prove safe, put in service, cancel the permit. So this is the final safety procedure for high voltage work. This is the sequence of work. Okay, first is the planning. You can add in this risk assessment also after planning. Then the sequence of isolation, that is called switching schedule. sequence of violations called switching schedule, proving dead, isolate, lockout for life, permit issued, work. Once you finish the work, de-isolate it, then permit to test and proof safe, put in service, cancel the permit. This I was telling you about this approach boundaries. You see, flash protection boundaries, there are certain boundaries. The flash protection boundary is the farthest established boundary from energy source. See, if you look at this next one, you can see here, this is the energized equipments here. And this is called flash protection boundary, this boundary. So how much you can go near to this? This is a limited approach. And this is a prohibited approach. That means you cannot enter into this. Restricted approach is here. So everything has been given a spacing. This is by OSHA. That means occupational safety hazards. Is it? Yeah, it is by OSHA. This has been specified by OSHA only. Approach boundaries. So here, flash protection boundary means the flash protection boundary is the farthest established boundary from the energy source. You can see here, this is the flash protection boundary. This is the farthest one. This is the source. This is the energized equipment. It is the far one which is from here. And if an arc flash is occurred, this boundary is where employee would be exposed to a curable second degree burn. As I told you, this second degree burn, it is 1.2 calorie per centimeter square. This 1.2 calorie, what I told you yesterday, this is the energy what your fabric can absorb, okay? Calorie per centimeter square. So it is defined as the maximum incident heat energy, okay? It is defined as the maximum incident and heat energy that a fabric can absorb and lessen the injury to second degree burn. The degree of burn means the burn what can happen to a human body. It can be first degree, second degree, third degree. First degree means it's mild burn. Second degree means it is a burn, a skin burns, but it's not deeper. But third degree means it's going to be a very deeper burns. So the boundary, the flash protection boundary, it is the farthest one. And this boundary is where the employee would be exposed to a curable second degree burn. That is only 1.2 calories per centimeter squared. So the issue here is the heat generated from the flash that results in burn. Limited approach means an approach limit at a distance from an exposed live part where the shock hazard exists. So what is the limited approach? Limited approach is this one. So this is a flash protection boundary. This is a limited approach boundary. And this all have been specified. What should be the distance you need to be away from this? You see, nominal voltage is up to, let's say it is 15 kV. That means 1500 volt. You should have limited approach boundary. If it is mobile conductor, fixed conductor, you should be away from this distance. Let's take 3.6, 15.1 kV to 36 kV if your high voltage falls in this. So it is limited approach boundary is 6 feet. If it is restricted approach, it is 2 feet. Prohibited approach is 0 feet. That means it is prohibited. You cannot enter here in this. So flash protection is the farthest one. Then is the limited one. Then you have restricted one. Prohibited means anyway, you cannot enter into this. So limited approach, restricted approach. Approach limit a distance from an exposed live part where there is an increased risk of shock. So the shock comes in this. Here is also shock is the limited approach. Prohibited approach means you cannot enter a distance from an exposed part which is considered the same as making a contact with a live part. So almost like you are touching a live part. Prohibited approach. Okay. So here you can see this is the one which is concerned to us up to 36,000. This is a various distance. Limited approach boundary, restricted approach boundary, prohibited approach boundary. It's the same thing. I just put it here in this. And these are the, you can see in this flash, what is flash protection, what is limited approach, and restricted approach, prohibited approach. Okay, it's very important question, workplace clearance. And here you can see arc flash boundary means the distance which an electrical arc can flash outward, which may endanger the employees working on the electrical equipment. Flash protection means the calculated safe distance from electrical equipment which would not expose an employee to the hazards associated with electrical flash. Okay. Okay, so this is with this work clearances, etc. So next we will go to the earthing. So why we do the earthing? You see, the earthing is done. We have seen different type of earthing like circuit earthing, bus bar earthing. Earthing down can be like circuit earthing and bus bar earthing. Circuit earthing means you already have an earth switch on the breaker. That is called circuit earthing. Bus bar earthing, here you use additional cables for earthing. Okay, portable earthing cables are there that we are using. So, but why the earthing is done? Earthing is done is a very important because concept to understand when working on high voltage systems. So it ensures that the stored electrical energy in equipment insulation after isolation is being safely discharged to earth. Higher the levels of insulation resistance required on higher voltage cabling leads to higher values of insulation capacitance. You see, all this is because of the capacitance of the property of the capacitance, you know. So when you apply voltage, there is a possibility that some residual energy is still left over. Like when you can see, like when even if you do a Megger test of 500 volt, you take out the Megger and you just ground with a cable, the one of the winding, let's say UVW, you apply a Megger, you touch one of the U winding with the ground, you find a spark. So that is because of the residual energy in that. So when you apply a voltage, let's say 500 volt or whether you apply 6000 volt, what happens? It has got a capacitive property in the insulator. It will try to store like a capacitance, it will charge. You see, the capacitance is how? When you apply voltage across a capacitance, positive and negative potential, when you apply voltage, slowly it charges to the voltage what it is applied. Potential becomes, the charging voltage becomes equal to the potential what you applied, it stops charging. But it stores in that. Unless you don't short that capacitor terminals. Once you short the capacitor terminals, the energy is discharged. So it stores. In the same way, the windings, the cables, all have a property of a capacitance. It stores the charges. And when you go and touch it, you may get a shock. So that is why we are doing this earthing. Earthing means you are discharging any residual voltage to the ground. Okay. So energy stored is joules. Okay. Energy stored in joules is equal to capacitance into voltage square. Capacitance into voltage square divided by 2. This is the energy stored in joules. Like power is equal to joules by joules means how much energy is transferred. The unit is in joules divided by the time, is it? So earthing down ensures that isolated equipments remain safe. The whole purpose of earthing is that whatever the equipments you isolated, it remains safe. There is no residual energy. That is why we are doing earthing. It is always a good practice that you must earth anything. Like when you work any equipments, you must make sure if it was live, you must ground it so that it is safe. It is any residual voltage is being discharged. So before earthing, ensure no potential or voltage on the equipment, whether it is a breaker or whether it is a switchboard. Use high voltage test probe to confirm no residual voltage present in them. These high voltage probes are, you can see this probe, you are not supposed to hold the probe before more of this. You see there's a black portion here. You're not supposed to hold it here. Your hand should be behind this. It is around 1.5 meters length of this probe. And this is to check any residual voltage. If any voltage is there, it gives the alarm here. So there is a small voltage monitor also. It will give you an alarm and as well as it indicates how much is the voltage. Okay, so this is the high voltage probes. So if you are checking, like one will be on the earth, one will be on the live conductor. That means if you are checking R phase, is any residual voltage, one should be on R phase, this should be the ground. Same like Y phase ground and red phase ground. Okay, this is the high voltage probe. Now here you can see the connecting ground cables. You see, look at this. These are the ground cables what I was telling. You have a lot of this type of cables here. Now here, what I have done is here I have isolated a transformer, high voltage transformer. High voltage transformer supply is going from here. So I have connected high voltage transformer 3 phase, one here, one here, one here. And these 3 cables are coming here. This is coming here and this is the one which is going to the ground. So you see this is connected here ground. One ground is connected here, one ground is connected here. So this is a way you are discharging any residual voltage what is there to this ground. Okay. So this is a high voltage cable. These cables you'll find plenty on board ship, these high voltage cables. This is one example. Like if you want to work on a bus bar, then you have to connect this one of this cable to bus bar R phase, one to the Y phase, one to the red phase, and these three are joining here. This end you must connect it to a safe ground. So this is a ground bar. You can see at the bottom is a ground bar. It is connected here. So these are the portable earth cables. In addition to the circuit earthing, like breaker and all has got an earth switch inbuilt earth switch that will automatically ground it with the switch itself. But here in bus bar, suppose if you want to ground it, you need to have this additional earth cables like this. Here you can see here, this is a grounding of a motor. So the motor has been grounded, three phase has been grounded, one is connected with the ground here. Now, how do you connect? Now, question is that suppose this is live, how do you connect this cable here? Because you cannot touch here, this is live. It means it is switched off, but you have a residual voltage here. Then how do you connect the cable here? For connecting this cable, you have a special tool. Okay, you don't have to touch this cable, and the tool you need to hook this and you need to connect it here. This I will show you in this. This is the special tool. This is the special tool, and this is the end of the tool. You have got a knot here. Now what you have to do is you have to put the cable which is inside this, and you can see this is the cable, and then you need to tighten this. So with the rod, you take this rod and put the earth cable inside here, and with the rod you push it on this and turn it, lock it here. So this you can see here, this is quite long, it's around 1.5 meters. You are not supposed to hold it here in this range from here. So this is a special tool for connecting this portable earth cable. So with this tool, you can connect this earth cable here, you can connect here, you can connect here, you can connect here. You don't have to physically touch these cables. With the tool itself, you can connect it, and you can connect these three cables here. Okay, so because before you apply this cable, there may be residual charges. So you're not supposed to touch directly. So with a special tool, you connect it, and once you connect it, then the residual energy will be discharged to this ground, and with the voltage test probe you check here, there is no residual voltage. Then you can safe to touch here. That means there is no residual voltage. So before that, when you connect the cable, you are not supposed to touch. You need to use this special earthing tool, grounding cable connection tool. Okay. Now, if you see a breaker, you see that there's a breaker, front side of a breaker here. Here you have various indications on this breaker, like breaker is connected or not, or breaker is disconnected or not. All these positions you can see here. Ensure the breaker is open, and you have a lockout relay. I told you the purpose of the lockout relay. All other relays are connected with the lockout relay. This is the final relay. That means even if you have a overcurrent or you have any other trips, this relay will be activated. And this relay, once it trips, you see it is showing here trip and reset. So once it is tripped, you need to put it reset, then only this breaker can be operated. So this is a breaker front panel. You will have various indication, whether the breaker is connected or not, whether the breaker is disconnected, whether the breaker is grounded, all these indications you can see here. Now here on this breaker, you can see two switches here. One is put the breaker into local control. So before you try to ground this breaker, you need to ensure the breaker is open and the switch is put to local mode. Once it is put to local mode, the breaker, you have two tools here. Now this tool is for the grounding switch. That means when you want to ground the breaker, you have to use this switch. The first one, this grounding tool. So this is for the grounding tool. This grounding tool switch has to be put here. So when you make this grounding switch, the breaker gets grounded. Breaker gets grounded from the breaker till generator connection, generator winding, it's still generator winding, it will get grounded. And this is this switch. This switch is known as the earthing switch. This switch, this tool is called the racking out tool. When you want to take out the breaker out, now this is the breaker racked out conditions. The breaker has come out. So this is called racking out. The breaker is totally out. This is called the racking out. Now racking out, this tool, that is a racking tool, you need to put in this hole and turn it in clockwise directions. When you start turning this in the clockwise directions, this will slowly come out. But this cover is still, you cannot open it. Once it is fully come out, that means the breaker has come out. You can see through this indication here, the breaker has fully come out. Also, you have this indication on the light that breaker is in the touch position. So once it is, this tool is put here, you turn it clockwise direction, breaker will be slowly coming out from the bus bar. It will get disconnected from the bus bar, it comes out. Once it comes out, then what you do, once it comes out, and take this tool, put it in this hole, make the switch to left side or right. Left side is for earthing, put it to left side, then it gets grounded. Once it gets grounded, this indication will come on here, the bus bar is, the breaker is grounded. Then you can open it, then only you can open this front cover. So that is known as this high voltage systems. This is called dead front. Dead front means there is nothing live in this. And you cannot open this cover. Even if you remove this screws, like this screws, if you remove it, this will not be released till the time you make the earthing switch. So once the earthing switch is made, and once these bolts are slackened, then you can open the front cover, then you can access to the breaker. So this is the way only you can access the breaker. Okay, hope you understood this. So what is a racking out tool? This is a tool here. This is the same diagram. The racking out tool is to be put here. So here is the racking out this thing. You need to put it inside and turn it this in the clockwise directions. So the breaker will come out, but still this cover is closed. Breaker will come out, you can see through this. And also this indication will come on, breaker touch position. So once it is racked out, I think the power is gone. So once it is fully racked out, you make the earthing switch with this earthing switch. Once earthing switch is made, then you can open this cover, front cover open, and you can access the breaker. Okay.